Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Jury Duty Podcast. I am Lindsay. That is Kimberly. Kimberly, tell everyone hello.
Hello, everyone.
We are so glad you guys decided to come back with us. We have a really important case that we want to talk to you guys about. We are really excited about this one, to go over this one and shed some more light on this case. A lot of work has been put into this. So, Kimberly is going to get us started on some information on a young lady named Mamta Bhatt.
Yes, so you're going to have to bear with me because this is a little bit of exposition here, and I'm going to refer to my notes at some point. So just pretend I'm making loving eye contact with you. But the Mamta Bhatt case is happening right where I live. So I've taken a really big interest in this since day one. And we plan to release some really great deep dive videos in the next few days on this. But today, we felt like we really wanted to jump right in. We're going to call this Ep.1, just some preliminary background. But before we do that, I want to implore you to stick around for this case. It started to peek through the clouds a little bit to widespread media, thanks to our friend, Vinnie Politan, as well as local news and other well-known sources like Nancy Grace, but then it stopped. And maybe that's because the case slowed down a little bit, but to put this in perspective, Mamta went missing. She's a missing woman at the end of July. Her husband is going on trial in December. So the case is moving really quickly. And we wanted you to know Mamta's story so you can also support the community as we look for justice and for answers. This is basically happening in my backyard, and the community is really, really invested. Mamta is a young, beautiful woman of color who immigrated to this country just 3 years ago. And cases like hers really demand the same level of scrutiny and attention as everybody else's. She was also a new first-time mom to a baby girl whose first birthday she's now missed, something that most mothers could not fathom doing voluntarily. And it really certainly tracks with most cases wherein witnesses will say things like, she'd never leave her babies. And it rings true. By all accounts, Mamta was a sweet, doting, thoughtful friend and person who was experiencing a lot of firsts here in a very big new life. But there were cracks in that facade, and ultimately it led to her disappearing virtually without a trace. I say that because we'll stay tuned for the deep dive on the evidence. Long and short, it is my hope that you will connect with Mamta and share with your friends and all who are interested. So let's talk a little bit about expectations because we have a lot of content coming to you on this case. We're going to have some excellent legal experts from the channels that you already love coming to join us to talk about the upcoming trial and answer our questions. The trial starts December 9th right here in Prince William County. I will also be attending this trial, so you will get real-time updates and information. We hope that you plan to set your notifications so you don't miss anything because we have a lot coming to you, including I'm going to take you, well, I've already taken you, you just don't know it yet, on a drive to the locations that are relevant to this case so that you can get a real visual representation and feel more informed when you hear information that we're going to share. I also have a 40-page document which we'll give you a peek at tonight as we set the table, complete with evidence, cataloging, videos of body cam, interviews, friends and family, photos, maps, timelines, and hopefully some interviews with those who love and want to see justice for Mamta. So now that I've done with the exposition, let's get a little bit into the details so that you're aware of what's happening in this case. I'm going to Tarantino this a little bit by front loading you with some info. Mamta went missing on July 30th of this year. Some might say that's a guess, but based on the evidence we have, I'm confident in saying that. Technically, this occurred somewhere in the late hours of the 29th into the 30th, but that's when the wheels go into motion with the evidentiary breadcrumbs. It's the last day she spoke to or saw anybody in the outside world. Her husband was arrested August 22nd on felony charges of concealing a body. Her body has not been found. She has not been found alive. So there's no body, no murder charges. So it's going to be interesting. I presume they're going to charge him with murder, but I don't know how that works. But thanks to our legal experts that are going to come join us, we might know. They assert she's no longer with us as far as the law goes and that he is the culprit. So where does that leave us? Well, The evidence may shock you and give you a pretty clear opinion of who the perpetrator is, but Lindsay and I are going to be as objective as possible and look at all of the evidence from motions, hearings, probable cause affidavit. And I have a fairly solid conviction that we know who did it, but we're going to wait and see. So where is Mamta? What happened to her? Let's cover what we're going to call the before phase tonight of this series of episodes, which is before the disappearance. So it's important to understand the buildup, the foundation. Bear in mind, the information we're going to share with you is compiled from research that I have painstakingly conducted as a lifelong academic, from verified sources, including Mamta and Naresh themselves, as well as secondhand accounts of others who knew the couple, news outlets, court documents. So some details may change or evolve, but I did a lot of fact checking. I will also be linking resources as we share them in the descriptions, and when possible, share this collective document with you once I find a good place to make it available. In the next episode, we will pick up where we left off, and I am ready to climb into this. Lindsay, are you ready after all of that exposition?
I'm ready. Justice for Mamta. I am really anxious to hear all of the details. This has been a case, as you said, was full steam ahead, then full stop. And we are here to talk about it, talk about the evidence. And as you mentioned, you will be there at the trial.
I will. Well, hopefully, as we're going along, you can call out some details that I might have missed. So let's get started.
Let's do this.
Let's get into the timeline, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's start in 2020, where this really relevant relationship begins. Mamta and Naresh, her husband, are married on December 10th. He is already a U.S. citizen who's about 10 years her senior. He's about 37 years old at this point, served here in the Army Reserves as a specialist. He also attempted to join the Fairfax County Police Department in 2022, but he was dismissed in less than a month. That was for performance-related issues. His defense will also say, as they've already put into court documents, that he worked in the White House in IT, which is interesting to me. In 2021, I looked at Mamta's social media presence just to see where her presence in the U.S. begins. I do know that 2021 is the year she immigrated here, and the beginning of her storytelling, I'll say, is August of 2021. She lived in Falls Church with her roommate, Nadia Navarro, who has been publicly vocal about Mamta's case, sometimes to some criticism, which we will not be diving into here. It's not about anyone but Mamta. They were both studying for medical-related roles, career-wise, and Mamta would eventually become a nurse, I think, in the surgical team in the pediatric department. There's been some back and forth on the internet as of late about what exactly she did, but she worked at the UVA Health Medical Center, such a long name, in Manassas right here, and she also worked at Inova in Fairfax, but I digress. Not too long after, in 2023, August 20th, they welcomed their baby girl. Her name is Nima, and I'm only comfortable saying that because it's been publicized by the media already, but we won't be showing too many photos of her face if we can help it, or saying her name. I'm just going to refer to her as Baby N. And they buy a house 10 days later on Heather Court in Manassas Park, which is where much of this buildup takes place. And Naresh's mother is living with them at the time temporarily. Not long after this, I'm calling it the Tesla. It's been a big topic of conversation in this case. September 3rd, Naresh purchases a brand new blue Tesla bearing standard plates. And this was worth noting to me because it seems to be a point of conversation and curiosity in the local community. By November 4th, just 2 months later, the car is registered with permanent handicap tags. So I don't know why that's relevant yet, but I feel like we might find out in court if it plays any part of his mental state or any physical evidence that there might be. All right. This is where we start getting a peek at what is coming. February 2024 is an especially critical time. On the 6th and the 16th, possibly other dates, I didn't do that deep of a dive. Mamta starts posting in social media groups seeking advice and resources and asking questions about separating from her husband, child custody, and how to get help in the United States as a single mother. And you can see here some of these posts. Her posts indicate that she is in the process of a separation. It's not clear if that was an unofficial, informal separation or if legal papers have been filed. Her post also indicates that her husband does not assist in child care or child rearing. And he allegedly says that he would send the child into the foster care system. I'm guessing that would be if she tries to leave him. And as people are replying, she mentions that they do live together and that he's withdrawn money from all of their accounts so she cannot access it.
So these social media groups, are these like the, you know how a lot of people have like the neighborhood groups and like the if you live in this town kind of groups. It's okay. Gotcha.
One of them is an immigration group specific to individuals from Nepal.
Okay.
And I believe the other one was also similar. And another one was a local, I don't know if it was like a divorced moms or single moms, but it was like a family oriented Facebook group where you could go get advice from other people. So I do know that majority of these were geared towards the Nepalese community here. And that's an excellent resource. She was smart to do that. Other people that have been in her circumstances that have immigrated here, what have you done? What resources can you help me with? But it becomes clear from her social media presence and her internet history that something is not right. And that in her mind, at the very least, in her words, they are separating. And that she is concerned that childcare is an issue, not because of logistics, but because he is going to unfairly leverage this baby in some way, which is horrible. But she asks for help from a social worker and that she needs advice. I don't know if she took any of the advice that was given to her, but it'll become clear that she had minimal resources at her disposal. And that might be part of the reason for it. So I put some red flags here that jump out to me. I think that part of this is an implication that Naresh had no interest in raising this baby without Mamta, or if she would decide to leave him and not take the child, which would be crazy. But I don't know if you have seen any real life situations, but you see it in movies all the time. You know, I'm not without my daughter is a great example. Sally Field, bless her heart. A lot of women might feel desperate enough to leave their situation that they'll just drop everything and everyone and go. I think maybe that might be one angle he was looking at. If you're going, go. But if you're going, you leave this baby here and whatever happens, happens. I don't know. Lindsay, did you get that vibe from her post?
Yeah, I did. I think that baby, unfortunately, was kind of used as a tool.
Yeah.
I don't like using that word in this situation, but
Right.
it was something that Mamta was going to have to choose between.
Yeah. It seems unlikely that she would have chosen that because remember, guys, at this point, she's still a missing person. And I say that with air quotes because she has not been found alive or deceased, and he's not been charged with murder. So you'll have to excuse me if I go between past and present tense as far as Mamta, because it's a little confusing and I want to be respectful too. But it's a common statistic that mothers tend not to disappear without their children or leaving them in the care of someone that they fear would put them at risk. So I think we're on the right path when we think that it's a manipulation tactic to get her to stay. But I'm also not sure if he wanted her to stay. It's very interesting. I have questions about who initiated the separation, if it was a thing or if it was something that she was harboring to herself, like, I want this and he doesn't know. We don't know those details yet. I'm sure we will in court, but so far those were the red flags that stuck out to me.
The whole situation sounds just toxic.
Right. And up to this point, all we know is bam, suddenly, very quickly, there's problems. So I'm sure there's a lot of context and details that we'll get later on. And by all accounts, based on photos and the memories that they did share on the internet with the rest of the world, they seem to be a happy, normal, average couple. So
everybody on the internet does, right?
Well, right. You rarely ever put your worst side on the internet.
Yeah.
Unless you're just,
there. Here she comes with the red flags. Yeah.
I can't see myself because I'm looking at a presentation of epic proportions. So hopefully y'all see this
No,
red flag.
we see the flag. Yeah.
Good. I meant you to. Bonus content coming your way. I unearthed, not that they were a secret, but I guess I had just compartmentalized while I was researching a ton, hours and hours of interviews with a reporter from Nepal that talked to Mamta's friends and family, her mother, her brother, and friends and family of Naresh Bhatt. So I feel like those might give us some insight into what was happening behind closed doors, with a grain of salt, of course. So once I get a deep dive through that stuff, I'm going to definitely give you guys an update. But at an unknown date in February, presumably because there wasn't a police report filed, so I don't know the date exactly, the Manassas Park Police Department, which is, by the way, where this takes place, Manassas Park, because I got so excited I didn't bother saying that to anybody in the beginning of this video. The police are called to their home for a disorderly conduct call. It is unclear who called, which one of them. They also have tenants living in their single family home basement and neighbors. It's a suburban neighborhood. No clue who called or what was going on, but there were no charges filed for me to go pull. But Mamta did tell the authorities at that time that Naresh was withholding her green card, her passport, money. He destroyed her cell phone, which, remember that later because it happens a couple times, allegedly. And during the investigation and a follow-up for this call, again, the friend, Nadia, tells law enforcement that Mamta is a DV victim and has documented injuries in photographs to her. A coworker, Sarita Nupain, hopefully I am pronouncing that correctly, also said the same. And Mamta sent pictures of facial injuries to her brother in Nepal, direct quote, in case they need to use it later. So at some point in February, Mamta leaves Naresh and stays with the friend, Sarita Nupain, for about a week. She arrived with no belongings. She was provided with clothing, a place to stay. They also put her on their family cell phone plan, so she would have a phone to use to get ride shares to and from work. She worked only 2 days a week at this point at the hospital, not far from their home in Manassas, but she was only working 2 days out of the week and had no way to get there because she also didn't have a car. Now, is that a control thing? I don't know. It very well could have been because she was still very new to the United States, may not have gotten a license yet. But after about a week, Mamta returns home to Naresh. And in a conversation about this, her coworker, Sunita Besnet Thapa, she called her D or Di. Again, I'm going to go with D. Sounds natural. If I'm wrong and you're watching, please correct me. Attempts to provide Mamta with DV resources after a conversation about the trouble she's having. And she is quoted as saying that, as you can see here, Mamta's response was essentially, she realizes how much she loves him. She wants to give him a chance to be a better person. She doesn't want to put him in problems. So,
I have some questions here. There are questions, and then it also made me think of the Gabby Petito Foundation.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding. Gabby Petito's family is now teaching law enforcement on these signs of domestic violence that aren't just visible.
Yeah. And that's like a textbook, not even textbook. It is just the classic protect my abuser kind of response that we see so often. Because remember, domestic violence now is not just physical. We're learning to acknowledge that it is also emotional, it is financial. And it seems to me like she's in a great deal of denial for many reasons, as many victims find themselves. But you're right, it's red flag central. But
it really
sending
is.
photos in case they're needed couldn't be more foreboding. I mean, obviously it implies that she'd been abused in the past and began documenting it as insurance.
I mean, what's your move if a family member was to send you a photo like that?
It's complicated, I think, because I'm a person that is very strategic when I make decisions, especially when I'm in crisis or somebody else is in crisis, because I want to think 15 steps ahead. If I do this, will something happen? If I don't do this? And then I get very caught up in my own mind. But I would definitely be encouraging this person to make as many official reports as humanly possible if that's all they do. Because removing yourself from a situation like that on an average day in a country you live in that you're familiar with legally and what your rights are, that's hard as it is. Imagine literally being alien to everything around you and how the law works and what she's entitled to. I can't imagine, first of all, the strength that took her to even muster up the, you know what, I'm out, I'm leaving. Good for her.
Yeah.
Most people don't even reach that point, but it does take an average of 7 tries to leave an abuser statistically. So we don't know how this would have played out otherwise, but I don't know. I feel like I would feel extremely conflicted, and I have been in this situation, but luckily they resolved themselves without me having to make decisions. And I'm sure the brother not being here probably also is limited in what he could do. It's assuming that the relationship is an empathetic one. I don't know much yet. I've got a lot of research sitting on my desk about her family, though, so we should maybe get some insight soon. But what would you do?
I mean, it's hard, right? Like, especially because her brother is in another country.
Right.
It's not like he can get in the car
Mm-hmm.
and show up and talk to her, lay hands on him,
Yeah.
whatever he feels is necessary, right?
If that's even the case,
If that's even the case, right?
societally speaking, we don't know what the culture might be elsewhere as far as gender roles and what's acceptable,
That's
what's
true.
normative. I'm not saying that that's happening here, but there's so many questions that I have that I haven't answered yet. But you're right. It's not like he can do anything.
Right. Well,
It's
and
a
it
helpless
sounded,
feeling.
yeah, well, and it sounded like her friends were trying their best to help where they could, giving her resources, giving her access to a place to stay, somewhere where she felt comfortable. She literally just showed up with nothing to someone's home, and they took her in and gave her everything that she needed.
Yeah. I'm going to call it now. This seems like a coercive control type of relationship to me.
Yeah.
And the sense that I'm getting is along the lines of big new life. They seem, as you can see from the photos here, to be initially and even up to January, right before the February event started. You can see the Happy New Year, Happy Anniversary. This is all happening weeks and months before this occurs, and they look and appear to be a normal, average, everyday couple. And I think
On
that
social media.
on social media,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that there's a certain way to look at Western culture and roll your eyes, and I totally get it. But again, I don't know culturally what the stark differences might be. I think maybe the more independence that she gained here and the more comfortable and established she's working, she is getting her citizenship. She is now a mother. I think a combination of confidence, empowerment, and getting comfortable in her surroundings probably changed the power dynamic
I think you're right.
uncomfortably for him.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you see this posts here, she's basically bending over backwards, publicly at least, which is, of course, the way that most abusers want to be acknowledged, public admiration. She's so proud to be his wife. He is the best person, even if it's all just a farce to keep up appearances, which I don't think it is. I think she wanted to believe that. And if she worked hard enough and was admiring enough, maybe it would be reciprocated. But I just don't know. That's just what it seems like off the bat. But yeah, it's not looking good come February, but this is where we start seeing that whole sort of rise to climax here.
Right.
March is a pivotal point as well. Naresh's mother returns to Nepal, which leaves Mamta and Naresh alone, presumably for the first time since baby N was born. They do, again, have tenants renting their basement, but for the most part, not that mom would be interfering. There's no witnesses. There's no other ears and eyes, even if they're accepting of your behavior. There's a very liberating feeling of having personal space when before maybe you didn't have as much personal space. I also heard that they weren't necessarily sleeping in the same bedroom even when mom was there. I'm going to have to confirm that, but it seems like a good opportunity for things to drastically shift now that there's nobody looking. And they do, because in April, according to the court documents from recent hearings, he uses his work laptop to Google how long to remarry after spouse dies and what happens to debt died spouse.
Do you think his first question, do you think he meant like how long is an appropriate time? Or do you think he meant like if I wanted to get married as soon as possible?
I think he meant legally speaking. How long do I have to wait?
Hmm.
And I only say that because some of the research that I haven't finished yet indicates that he might have had other girlfriends before and during their marriage. I cannot confirm that, so I won't say it. But the vibe I'm getting from what I'm looking at tells me that he was a very decisive person, maybe a little insecure. And insecure people form really insecure attachments. So people think it's cocky, really confident people that cheat or have, what are we going to call them, like a side chick or a side guy. It's actually the insecure people that do that the most because they want a security blanket. They want some type of relationship waiting for them when they exit the one that they're unhappy in. So I think that might have been a more logistical question, but that's just me. But I don't know whose debt he might be talking about. Maybe since she was a student while she was here, maybe it's student debt. I don't know.
Is the Tesla?
The Tesla,
The
which will be
Tesla.
important later, guys. So the Tesla.
Right.
June 19th, Mamta makes another social media post that is noticed, seeking help with her green card. So remember, in February, she told the police that he took all of her paperwork from her, but she needs it to provide to the hospital as her employer, as well as her August naturalization meeting, which is rapidly approaching. And she posts that her green card's missing and she needs to get her naturalization paperwork underway. How do I do this without my original green card? And what options do I have? She's clearly not in a flight mindset. She's not thinking, I need my green card because I need to leave the country. I'm separating from my husband. It's, I'm trying to make roots here.
Right.
And I'm trying to establish myself. My employer needs this paperwork. And also, I'm going to need it to become a citizen. That to me does not scream, I'm going to pick up and leave and be gone in the wind so nobody can find me.
Right.
And then finally, July 24th, basically everything after this is rapid fire succession of events. But she talks on the phone to a childhood friend in which she discusses her troubled marriage. So here's my red flags here, Lindsay. Feel free to add on to them because there's plenty. So they're alone in the house, aside from the basement. And something I noticed as far as breadcrumbs go is the conflict moves from an emotional, sort of intangible, invisible thing to a traceable evidence of discord, mental states, events leading to actions, missing documents, Google searches, things like that. It's becoming something that you can now sort of trace with your finger almost up, down, versus just someone's having marriage problems and who knows what's going on. And then you add the fact that we already know that her documents are not missing. He's keeping them from her. And this will come up again. And the Google searches, that shows a baseline of tension and activity, but also some, it's not a premonition because nobody's psychic, but some premeditation and forethought to what might be happening later, which is why I think the police were so quick to zero in on him. Were there any other red flags so far or questions that you're thinking about now that we've reached July 24th?
Well, a couple things come to my mind. I'm wondering if mom living with them is actually what kept them together that long, because
Maybe.
potentially she could have been helping around the house, making it easy on certain areas, and also maybe he had a good relationship with his mother, and his mother could have said, like, you need to treat her better, or maybe do this, like giving it advice and kind of just like calming the waters a little bit, if that makes sense.
It's possible.
Um,
We can answer that too, because she
yeah,
did some interviews. So hopefully I can circle back and shed some light on those
right.
questions you have.
Yeah, that's kind of what my thought was on that. What's so sad, the thing, and I've thought about this case quite a bit since I learned about it a couple months ago when I found out she was missing, is she asked for help.
Yeah.
She was reaching for help.
Yes.
She took help,
Mm-hmm.
but it was also, I think that was very threatening for her husband.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because if he knew that she was reaching out for help, even just independently online, let's just throw that out and pretend he had no idea she'd been doing that. He can see that she has someplace to run to. She has friends that will shelter her. He is seeing that she is building a support system, which means she's probably also talking.
Yeah.
And the sanctity of female relationships is unlike anything else. Same thing with marriage. Most of the time when people say, don't tell anyone, I'm like, all right, I can tell my husband because he doesn't count.
He isn't. Yeah.
He doesn't count.
He's a safe space.
But he can see that she's got a network, but that also means he can see some of the influence of that network. I can't tell you how many times, both personally in relationships I've had or others have had that I've observed, that whole accusation of, gosh, you're turning into this person, like it's a threat. And that person happens to be like me, outspoken, opinionated, articulate, not pushy, but will push you when needed. And I think maybe he sees these friends, especially the American friends, because there were a lot of people from communities in Nepal that she was able to bond with here, which was probably very comforting to her. But right now in the news, her coworker, Holly Worth, could not be more vocal, and I praise her for it. But I can see the influence of someone's willingness to be vocal and be direct and get involved. And I can see that it's very threatening to someone that wants everyone to butt out and know nothing. And it could also influence Mamta's behavior. Maybe it was empowering to her. I don't know. I wish I knew her personally. Her TikTok, her Facebook, her socials, they're public. It's weird to look at them, but it also helps you get to know her a little bit. And she does list herself as a content creator. So I think she aspired to do something with it. And it is a weird voyeuristic window into her, but she seemed just like a genuinely good human being.
Very sweet.
Yeah. Just exploring the world around her and living her best life. She was 28 years old and had all of it in front of her. And she was a new mom. So much of that is spent documenting little babies, growth and development. I can see becoming a mother changing the way that you feel as a woman. And then add to that, she's in a whole new world. She is, I can see that being terrifying for him. But also, I don't know if it's jealousy or if it's anything else, but there's definitely some other stuff going on there that we haven't put together yet, because we need to figure out why is this a toxic relationship? We haven't gotten there yet. Hopefully I will, and we can share with you, but it raises questions like, how did we get here? It was an arranged marriage, I can tell you that, which is not uncommon in many cultures, but they seem to like each other.
I mean, sometimes it works.
Right.
Right. I remember seeing, pictures and some videos and stuff like that. It seemed like they had a genuine connection for a period of time,
right. And it's not all for the internet. It's not like the camera stops and they're like, all right, go to your side of the house. See you tomorrow for our next photo shoot. There's got to be something there to base it on. But so, yeah, it's red flag central up in here, which is going to bring us to the real meat and potatoes here. It's going to get very interesting. So hopefully when we wrap this section up, you're going to come back for the next episode, because this is where all of my detective work and all of my fun adventures into the world taking you to these places begins. So if you love erratic but really focused, stabilized, aggressive driving and the occasional...
She's not lying.
I'm not
This
lying.
is not a joke for the internet. This is real life.
From an airport, specifically DCA, which is right outside my office in Arlington and right outside of DC, where it's like Mad Max out there. You gotta know how to do it.
No,
come along with me, guys.
I'm not faulting you for driving the way you do. I'm just saying it's an adventure.
It is an adventure. So you're going to come along with me, because I'm going to take you to all the places we're going to talk about. But we're getting closer and closer to the end of what is the first act, so to speak. July 27th is the last time Mamta is seen out in public. So I have sort of an asterisk here if you're looking at this infographic that I've made. Some sources said this was 8:17 p.m. Others say it was 4:17 p.m. Now, I know at some point Mamta was working only Mondays and Tuesdays from 8 to 4. In screen shots shared from her friend Nadia, she says, I work 0800, so at 1600 on Mondays and Tuesdays. Will you come and help babysit baby? And, I think that shifted at some point because some of the evidence shows that she would be working on different days, but my gut says 4:17 p.m. I'm going to go with it, but I could be wrong. So,
That's my vote too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's mixed media, so to speak, on what she was doing there. Someone reported that she was there for an appointment. I don't know if that would be within her professional capacity or not. Either way, beside the point, she was seen outside of the hospital, waiting for her rideshare to come and pick her up. There was some hoopla over, oh, she canceled the Uber. It shows that she canceled it. That's fine. She gets into a dark colored car. She goes home. People were putting a lot of emphasis on who was the car. It doesn't matter. She made it home. It could have been a friend. It's neither here nor there. I spend a great deal of time at this hospital, so I can tell you it's not exactly in some back country field where there's no people. It's right there off of Business 234 in a bustling mix of suburban and commercial downtown, like business Manassas, not downtown Manassas City. I might have to make a whole video for all of you that don't live here to understand the different Manassases. Because there's three. If you really want to get specific, there's Manassas. I call it Manassas proper, I guess. It's right off the highway. It's where all of the shopping and all of the commuters to DC live, lots of apartments, lots of townhomes. And then in between Manassas 1 and Manassas 2, there's the hospital, the mall, and then you get into the city of Manassas, which is where the courthouse, the detention center, the Social Security building, train station, all that is. And then it's Manassas Park. If you're not from here, I'm just going to keep calling it Manassas, just so I don't have to confuse everyone. But there's chapters of Manassas here. But I frequent this hospital. My specialist is in this hospital. It's also down the street from my house. So it's weird to go in for my appointments and hit the front door and go, where's the camera? I'm looking around for cameras now everywhere I go. Like, okay, what angle would it have been? But it is strange to go in and out of the hospital knowing that at some point, many points, she had been there, standing probably in a similar spot. And I'll take you there too. Don't worry, guys. I'm taking you to the hospital so you can see it. But this is the last time that she is seen outside of the home by anybody. Not the last time she is heard from, though. So the 28th is the day before I'm going to say she goes missing. I know I said the 30th, but don't worry. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. The 28th of July. Naresh is in Baltimore. Why? No one has really made that clear yet. But he leaves Baltimore at 11:34 p.m., according to forensic records from his Tesla. On average, I would say it takes about 90 minutes to get from here to Baltimore. It's a 76-mile drive. And that ends up being true because he arrives home at 1:02 a.m. on the 29th, technically, according to the Tesla. Again, no one knows what he was doing in Baltimore. It's just, as you can see from this little magnifying glass, I outlined that zip code. It's just neighborhoods. As you can see, it's neighborhoods, residential areas, grocery stores, things you need when you live in a neighborhood. There's nothing that sticks out to me after combing through the map of this area that I'm like, oh, that's what he was doing there. No clue.
Do we know what he was doing for work at that time?
I don't. And I'm sure it's in court documents somewhere or has been published somewhere, but specifically at that moment in time, I don't know what he was doing for work.
Okay.
So on the 28th, meanwhile, for Mamta, while Naresh is in Baltimore, she makes several attempts to phone friend Nadia. Nadia is asleep, does not answer her calls or her text messages. At some point, she must have contacted another friend because that individual also contacted Nadia expressing concern about Mamta. To what effect, I'm not fully read in on, but it's unclear whether this is the same contact that happens later that evening, because at about 11 p.m., before Naresh is about to leave Baltimore, she makes repeated texts and calls to Nadia asking her to come over. So I don't know if that is the same series of texts or calls from earlier in the day. And it's just been unclear from reporting that they're one incident, or if these are attempts throughout the whole day to reach Nadia. But at some point, it is clear from investigative resources that she asks Nadia pretty late at night to come over. We don't know why, though. She also posted her final TikTok on this day at almost 11 a.m. A little post of baby N on the stairs, just being adorable, as babies tend to do. And then, as we know, 11:34, Naresh leaves Baltimore. You can see here in the graphic that I kind of separated it because the days are going to bleed together here in some of the evidence, which I think has been why it's been so confusing for people.
Right.
This is also the one of the last times that she speaks to her mother. Before we press forward to our big climax of the day, I had lots of red flags about this. So many red flags about this. All over the place, red flags. Why was she so persistently reaching out to Nadia? Now, I have had contact with Nadia. It slowed down actually the day that he was arrested. We were supposed to be setting up a court TV interview because Lindsay and I sort of through our podcasting networking had been informally, I don't even know what to say. We were like informally
Just connecting
lending a
people.
hand.
Yeah.
And I know Vinny Politan was trying to have her on so she could continue bringing awareness. And I had not had a response from her, and I was expecting to schedule. I was like, what's going on? And then I started getting pings on my cell phone because I had Google Alerts set up that they had arrested him. And then it started to make sense. Oh my God. So this is really starting to move now, because up to this point, it was just 4 or 5 weeks of what the hell is going on, given, the circumstances. And you know how tired I was when I did this? The circumstances since Naresh's address instead of arrest.
That's okay.
I have been putting this together for days and days and days and days and days, like nonstop. So forgive me. I'll correct it before I share it with anybody else.
But why do you think Mamta was trying to get a hold of Nadia? Do you think that...
I think she was afraid of what would happen when he got home.
You think so?
There have been very few times in my life, but there have been times where I have begged, borrowed, and would have pleaded with people like, can you come over, or can we go out? I can't be here. I don't want to be here for whatever this confrontation is, or I don't want to be alone when this confrontation happens. I 100% think she was apprehensive about him coming home, especially given the proximity of her last known calls to Nadia that night and his departure time.
Or do you think she was upset because he was potentially with this rumored girlfriend?
That is a possibility. I was careful. I wanted to be careful not to put that in writing here because I'm not entirely sure, but I think there's something to it. I just want to weed out whether it's accurate and verifiable or not, but it's possible.
Right.
And I'm also not sure. I'm sure this will be in some type of legal presentation somewhere, but behind closed doors, we don't know what their day-to-day looked like. Were they arguing a lot? What did they argue about? How did they argue? Was it a lot of shouting? Was it quiet? Was it physical? It seemed like she was persistent in trying to reach out to friends, clearly out of some level of anxiety or apprehension about him coming home. I think it's really going to depend on whatever was happening in the days leading up to this between the two of them for context. And I'm absolutely dying to connect those dots and understand it, because there's just so much we don't know right now.
I know.
In my preliminary research on the deep dives I've got going yet again, there is an indication that they did have an up-down sort of volatile relationship, but I'm going to stop there because I hesitate to prescribe any kind of labels to anything. But it's definitely clear that she did not want to be alone with him. And that's all I know. So what I'm going to also assume at this point is there have been several hearings, motions hearings, bond hearings. There was Frank's hearing. Like, there's been a whole bunch of stuff happening court-wise since his arrest. We're not going to go too far into those instances. We're really just going to focus our energy on the trial.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to let whoever else is covering get into the real nitty-gritty of the motions, because by the time the trial runs its course and comes around, that stuff won't necessarily be as relevant or important to the story of what's happening. And I'm sure, that being said, that there's information that they have that we don't yet, and the information that's been released was for a purpose, a probable cause affidavit, bond hearings. So it's possible we can connect more dots, or it's possible that we still will never know. But something that I put here in my red flags and my questions, Mamta spoke with her mom twice a day via FaceTime or phone. We can assume at some point, filling in a blank here, that morning and that evening that they spoke, because the only disruption in their routine happens the next day, and then every day after that when Mamta no longer answers her calls. So
And that was July the 29th or 30th?
The 29th. The next day is the 29th. So I'm assuming, which is why I'm comfortable putting it here, that also occurring on the 28th, she spoke to her mother at least twice.
Yeah.
So there's that. And maybe we'll hear more about that. Maybe we won't. But it looks at this point that the routine has yet to be disrupted. She's done everything she needed to do. She's gone everywhere she needs to go, spoken to who she needs to talk to. It's just this palpable fear response that seems to be projecting off of this, that she did not want to be alone with her husband when he got home for some reason.
Man. I wish she would have answered her phone.
I know. And I know that she has to feel horrible about that. And
yeah.
I'm not going to comment on the way that the community here has received Nadia, because
that has nothing to do with
it has
Mamta.
nothing to do with it, but it has become a distraction.
Oh,
I
I'm sure.
have not had anything but pleasant conversations with Nadia myself, but I don't know her. I also don't know what interactions and experiences other people have had. Again, it's not important, but the local community has strong feelings about it, and I'm going to respect that, and I'm going to have zero dog in that fight or side in that argument.
Well, our focus is Mamta.
Exactly, which is where everyone else should be focused.
Right.
I think there's some budding conspiracy theories about involvement from Nadia. I'm like, you guys need to stop that. Honestly.
Yeah.
Honestly, it has no basis in reality. Is there a question about someone's character, intentions in the aftermath of this as far as attention or opportunity? I do not know. And I won't speculate, and I won't say that there is or there isn't. I have had nothing but pleasant conversations with her. I will leave it there. But were there any other red flags up to this point of the information?
No, I mean, I kind of have the same thoughts and feelings, red flags and questions that you have, right?
All right. Here we go. Mamta's last confirmed activities. This is a very high level document, by the way. The 40 plus pages is the high level. There's about 100 pages of my typed notes, inferences, links, resources. This is important because this is where we are going to sort of wrap up this introduction to this case and pick up again later. But it's important to understand this is where the door opens and one is shutting because things are in motion now. So July 29th, we already know that at 1:02 a.m., Naresh comes home from Baltimore. We're technically now on the 29th. Mamta is alone in the house, well, the main part of the house with baby. Little is publicly known about whether she was awake when he got home, whether there was arguing, conflict that would trigger what happens next. But clearly, in this coming 24-hour period, something drastically goes off the rails. So at some point during the day on the 29th, Mamta does speak to a friend either in Texas or New York, unclear which, about a housewarming party. So again, there's future planning here. That's what that tells me. But also it's contact with the outside world, which is super important. And at 7:45, Mamta has her regular video chat with her mother, which lasts for 15 minutes and 14 seconds. So roughly to about 8 p.m. sharp. Her mother has done interviews and implied that Mamta seemed gloomy or emotionally just in a negative space. And after 8 p.m., Mamta is not heard from nor seen again. Law enforcement will likely agree that sometime between 8 p.m. and, as you'll see later, 4 a.m., it's a very short window of time, about a workday, about an 8-hour period, that Naresh ended her life in the master bedroom area and bathroom of their home and dragged her remains somewhere, based on the evidence that they retrieved on their 25-plus search warrants. Neither she nor her remains have been found. There have been no successful tips leading to them, despite many areas that have been searched, which are also going to be on the graphics, visuals, and drive that I'm going to take you all on. But essentially, 8 p.m. on July 29th is the last time we can confirm that Mamta is been confirmed as with us by another person. That's where we're going to end this foray into the Mamta Bhatt case, but it only gets... So that is where we're going to leave off. 8 p.m., July 29th is the last time that we know for a fact that Mamta is alive and well. And then we're going to walk you through what happens in the days following July 29th that take us to where we are now with the trial in December. I really, really hope that everyone's going to come back and finish the story with us, because it's not just a story, it's real life. I really hope that whatever happened, we get to the bottom of it and actually get details so that we can find her. I will put in the description of this episode contact information for tips for the Manassas Park Police Department. So if you do reside in the local community and have information that you can share, please share it. We're going to get into the deep dive next time, and we'll be posting the adventures of driving along all of these places with me buckled in. What do you think so far, Lindsay?
Her story is very intriguing to me. My heart breaks for the baby and her family. I wonder if not having a body, not knowing where she is going to cause problems down the line. I hope not, but
I hope not too. The twists and turns from here, they're not sharp, but they are interesting.
yeah.
And again, I'm going to do my best to stay as objective as possible. It's happening around me. I know people involved peripherally, not actively, but people from the government side, law enforcement side, that all have very different perspectives and vantage points of what's happening, and probably information that clearly we do not have. But
Right.
it's weird when something happens like this in your community and everyone says that. It's always a small town, right, Keith Morrison?
Mm-hmm.
This is not a small town, but things happen everywhere.
Why do you think this story has stopped so quickly?
Honestly, one, because I think there is undertone of filing it as less important than other cases happening in bigger cities and more. If I have to see another Florida court case this year, sorry, Lindsay, I know you're not originally from there, but good God, Florida is going to stay the number one spot for the weirdest shit criminally. It's going to take number one every year. Top of the
It's the
charts.
Mecca.
What in the world, Florida? What is happening there? It's just getting worse. But I think it initially gained traction for the reasons it should. There's a missing woman and the circumstances are a bit sus. But do I think there is some maybe unconscious or unacknowledged bias that I want to have faith that the national and international media sees this as important as a great example, Gabby Petito. Everyone was very upset about that, but Nicole Schmidt has every right to want justice for her daughter, regardless of what she looks like. But I think people compare that to other cases and go, look at all the attention and the outrage and the documentaries. Is anyone going to make a documentary about Mamta? Probably not. I hope that they do. She deserves it. But is that maybe an unconscious bias that floats around, which directs our attention without us maybe not admitting it, but realizing it? Possibly. She, again, a young immigrant woman of color, which is upsetting, but I'm going to choose to have faith in humanity that it's the speed of the case. We're talking July to December, we'll have a conclusion. That's actually pretty quick. And he waived his right to a speedy trial. I don't know what happened there, but they're also not charging him with murder, which is another twist that I can't wait to talk to our legal expert about, because I have questions about charging him with concealing a body, which as a Class 6 felony in Virginia, not a harsh punishment. I'll talk about that more in the next one, because fines and some jail time, but we're talking negligible in the grand scheme of your life. So I hope that they do plan to charge him with him, or I'll just say this objectively, whoever did it, that's where I am. Okay. I think that is why it didn't.
It feels like, too, with cases, once they make an arrest, it really takes the steam out of the coverage.
Yeah, because of all the legal nuances that happen, unless you're Sarah Boone and you're Henry VIII and your lawyers, or Lori Vallow, where you've got competency issues. I think this flew under the radar after his arrest because nothing was happening, so to speak, that people could invest in. But here we are. There have been motions, hearings, and we're approaching trial time. It just in the blink of an eye. So please stick around with us. I'll try to keep the ranting and rambling to less than an hour next time. But we're going to do what we can to get as much information as possible. And I don't know what the camera situation will be in the courtroom. I'm going to guess, because this has not been on the main stage, so to speak, that there will be streaming of this, but devices are allowed in our courtrooms, so I'd have to turn it off. But at the very least, I'll be available after each day in court to share and maybe make some connections there that will help shed some light on who Mamta was as a person and who Naresh is as a person. We have to give some equal attention to that because he's part of the equation here.
Right. Well, stay with us, guys, because like Kimberly said, there's more to the story that we're going to dig into. We have guests coming on to explain some different pieces of this story to make it more clear.
Driving adventures.
Driving adventures. You didn't know that you'd be doing that with Kimberly.
Flat Stanleying this with me. You're coming on an adventure.
Yes, I love flat Stanleying.
Where will
Is that a verb?
We're making it one.
Okay.
It's a verb now. We're flat Stanleying.
It's a verb now. Yep, there you go. All right, guys. Until next time, make sure you turn on all the notifications, follow us on all the socials,
Yes.
And we'll see you next time. Yep. Bye, guys.
Make good choices, or at least don't put them on the internet, or we could be talking about them. Bye.
Start over. We're so stupid.
We're so extra.
We have no business being on the internet.